He said, "The duty of young people is to study literature and the arts when they have any energy to spare after the performance of moral duties. If they do not perform their duties and study literature and art first, their learning is not for their own improvement." Mencius said, "It will be all right to serve one's parents as Songzi served his." Mencius never considered Songzi's filial piety to be excessive, for whatever a son can personally do should be done. In dealing with the troubles caused by one's mother, one should not be too firm. In dealing with his mother, the son should help her with mildness and gentleness, so she will be in accord with righteousness. If he disobeys her and the matter fails, it will be his fault. Is there not a way to obey with ease? If one goes forward with his strength and abruptly resists or defies her, the kindness and love between mother and son will be hurt. That will be great harm indeed. The kindness and love between mother and son will be hurt. That will be great harm indeed. How can he get into her heart and change her? The way lies in going backward, bending his will to obey, and following his mother so that her personal life will be correct and matters well managed. The way for strong ministers to serve weak rulers is similar to this. The third undivided line from the bottom of the hexagram Ku, trouble, is a yang line. It occupies the position of strength but deviates from the mean. This is the mistake of excessive strength, and therefore may be some small occasions for repentance. However, it is in the body of the trigram Sun, yielding, and there is obedience after all. To obey is the foundation of serving parents. Furthermore, its position is correct. Therefore, there will not be any great error. However, if there are small occasions for repentance, it shows that one is not skillful in serving parents. This is to say that in dealing with the troubles caused by one's father, one should not be too strong, but should also regard obedience as fundamental. Obedience is the foundation of serving parents. The third line is too strong and deviates from the mean, and is therefore not free from the defects of resistance and defiance. But its body, Sun, is correct, and can compensate for its deviation from the mean. Thus it is mistaken, and yet it is not. Although there will be small occasions for repentance, there will be no great error. But those who are skillful in serving parents will be soft in their voice and submissive in their spirit, happy and gentle in appearance, and without the slightest feeling of defiance. If one is too strong and has small occasions for repentance, he is not excellent in serving his parents. To be correct in human relations and to be earnest in ties of affection are the ways to regulate the family. Someone asked, if we want to be correct in human relations, ties of affection may be hurt, and if we want to be earnest in ties of affection, they may deviate from human relations. What can be done? Zhu Xi answered, earnestness in ties of affection must be realized within correct human relations. When people are earnest in ties of affection, they are all right if they do not err in human relations. In family relationships, parents and children usually overcome correct principles with affection and supplant righteousness with kindness. Only strong and resolute people can avoid sacrificing correct principles for the sake of personal affection. Therefore, in the hexagram, Jiaren, family, essentially speaking, strength is considered good. The text of the topmost undivided line of the hexagram, Jiaren, family, says that in regulating the family there must be sternness. In addition, Confucius warns us that we must first of all be stern with ourselves. If one does not apply sternness first to himself, people will complain and will not submit. The text of the second lowest undivided line of the Kwei-mei, Marriage of a Maiden hexagram, says that correctness and tranquility should be maintained. This principle is not out of accord with the normal and correct relationship between husband and wife. People today consider indecent liberties and improper intimacies as normal, and therefore consider correctness and tranquility as abnormal, without realizing that these are the normal and lasting ways of the relationship between husband and wife. Tranquility and correctness are the ways to enable husband and wife to live together for a long time, whereas indecent liberties and improper intimacies result in disrespect and cause husband and wife to drift apart. Most people of today are careful in choosing sons-in-law, but careless in selecting daughters-in-law. Actually, the character of sons-in-law is easy to see, but that of daughters-in-law is difficult to know. The choice of a daughter-in-law is very important. Why should it be neglected? Male persons are usually outside the home. Their character can easily be seen in their speech and their dealing with others. Female persons confine themselves to their own private quarters. It is difficult to know their character. Furthermore, taking a daughter-in-law in marriage is to continue the family line. Some ancient people predicted whether a family would prosper or decline on the basis of the virtuous or vicious character of the daughter-in-law. The matter is of utmost importance. Should the choice be neglected? When one's parents have passed away, he should be doubly sorrowful on his birthday. How can he have the heart to give a banquet and amuse himself with musical entertainment? If both parents are still living, that will be all right. From the day a child is born, parents go through a period of hardship in bringing him up. If the parents are gone, the anniversary should be the day on which the son remembers them very keenly and is sorrowful that they are gone. How can one have the heart to give a banquet with elaborate musical entertainment for guests in order to gain happiness for himself? If both parents are still living, it is perhaps all right to take advantage of the day to amuse them and to make them happy. In the biographical account, it is said that fully developing one's nature until one's destiny is fulfilled is necessarily based on filial piety and brotherly respect. How can filial piety and brotherly respect fully develop one's nature until his destiny is fulfilled? Later generations have considered nature and destiny as separate from filial piety and brotherly respect, but they form only one system. Fully developing one's nature until destiny is fulfilled can be achieved in the very acts of filial piety and brotherly respect. Nature is what man has received from heaven, and destiny is what heaven has endowed him with. When these are demonstrated in human affairs, they become the way to serve parents and follow the elder brother, and are called filial piety and brotherly respect. They all form one system. To practice filial piety and brotherly respect to the fullest extent is to develop nature fully until destiny is fulfilled. Even sweeping the floor and answering questions belong to the same system as fully developing nature until destiny is fulfilled. They are not distinguished as fundamental or secondary, or as refined or coarse, but later generations who talk about nature and destiny have treated them as something different, high above and remote from daily life. Hence, filial piety and brotherly respect were mentioned in order to explain the system by means of what is close to daily life. Sweeping the floor and answering questions are coarse and simple things, but in principle they form the same system as fully developing nature until destiny is fulfilled. Although nature and destiny are fundamental, while sweeping and answering are secondary. The fundamental is embodied in the secondary, and the secondary penetrates through the fundamental. They are not sharply distinguished as fundamental and secondary. Although nature and destiny are refined while sweeping and answering are coarse, the refined must be revealed in the coarse, and the coarse is transmitted through the refined. They are not sharply distinguished as the refined and the coarse. It is not that today there are no people who practice filial piety or brotherly respect. The reason why they have failed to develop their nature fully until their destiny is fulfilled is that they practice filial piety and brotherly respect without understanding them. Question. Ti Wu Lin had a different attitude toward his son's sickness from that towards his nephew's sickness, and he confessed that it was selfish. Why? Answer. It does not matter whether he slept peacefully or not. The fact that he did not get up in one case but got up 10 times in the other shows selfishness. Love between father and son is essentially a matter of impartiality. To attach any personal idea to it is selfish. We do not know the facts in Ti Wu Lun's case. If his brother's son was sick and was not attended to, if he got up 10 times, he was not selfish. And if his own son was sick but was attended to, even if he did not get up, he was not selfish. We do not know the situation today. Master Cheng was using the case to discuss general principles rather than Ti Wu himself. If one is concerned with his son's sickness, why not get up to see him? Ti Wu Lun did not because he was afraid that others would criticize him as selfish. He was equally concerned with his nephew's sickness. Why did he have to get up 10 times? He did so because he wanted to show his impartiality. This fear of criticism and this attempt to show impartiality are selfish desires. The love between father and son is an ultimate of human relations and the principle of nature. To attach the slightest personal idea to it and to manipulate things is selfish and is out of accord with the impartiality of one who is completely identified with the principle of nature. Further question. Should there be any difference between one's treatment of his own son and his treatment of his brother's son? Answer. When the sage instituted social regulations, he said, the sons of brothers are the same. That means one should treat his brother's son as his own. Further question. By nature, one attaches more importance to his own son and less importance to his brother's son. It seems there should be some difference. Is that right? Answer. It seems so because people today look at the matter from the selfish point of view. Confucius said, the relation between father and son is rooted in nature. This was said only in relation to filial piety, and therefore he said that the relation between father and son is rooted in nature. But are the relations between ruler and minister, elder and younger brothers, guest and host, and friends not rooted in nature also? Simply because people today take these relations too lightly, they have not traced their source, and therefore they think there should be a difference. How much difference is there between one's own son and his brother's son? They are both the offspring of one's parents. Brothers are called hand and foot simply because they have separate bodies. Because of this fact, most people love their own sons differently from their brother's sons. This is a great mistake. Further question. Confucius regarded Kongye Chang as inferior to Nanyang and therefore gave his brother's daughter to Nanyang in marriage and his own daughter to Kongye Chang. Why? Answer. This is to judge the sage by one's own selfish mind. Anyone who avoids suspicion is internally deficient. The sage was perfectly impartial. Why should he have to avoid suspicion? In giving one's daughter in marriage, one seeks a match according to her qualifications. If, as we may suppose, one's brother's daughter is not very beautiful, One must select a young man of corresponding quality to match her, and if one's own daughter is beautiful, he must select a young man of good talents to match her. Why should one avoid any suspicion? In the case of Confucius, it may have been that the ages of the daughters and the pupils did not match, or that the marriages took place at different times. We do not know any of these facts. To think that Confucius did what he did in order to avoid suspicion is greatly mistaken. Even a worthy does not do things in order to avoid suspicion. How much less does a sage? Master Cheng referred to the difference in age and the difference in dates of marriage. He did so as one way of answering someone's question. It does not mean that these were the actual facts. Probably both pupils were good enough men to be entrusted with the daughters. Perhaps he saw Kwang Ya Chang first and gave his own daughter in marriage, and later saw Nanyang was also a good man and gave his brother's daughter in marriage to him. Judging from Master Cheng's explanation, perhaps Confucius' daughter, being older, was married first and his brother's daughter later. Question. According to principle, it seems that one should not marry a widow. What do you think? Answer. Correct. Marriage is a match. If one takes someone who has lost her integrity to be his own match, it means he himself has lost his integrity. Further question. In some cases, the widows are all alone, poor, and with no one to depend on. May they remarry? Answer. This theory has come about only because people of later generations are afraid of starving to death. But to starve to death is a very small matter. To lose one's integrity, however, is a very serious matter. A married woman should follow only one husband throughout her life. To marry again is to lose integrity. The injunction not to marry a widow is intended for a superior man. How can an inferior man of the street be expected not to do so? Some people think that Master Cheng's words are extreme, but they are not. They express only a common principle. If a woman sacrifices her integrity because of fear of hunger, how different is she from the minister who surrenders to the enemy because of fear of battle? When a widow remarries, she is ashamed. If one does a thing knowing it to be shameful, what else will he not do? Cheng Hao. To leave parents or children who are sick in bed to a quack doctor is tantamount to having no parental affection or filial piety. In serving parents, one should know something about medicine. Cheng-Yi. At his father's funeral, Master Cheng asked Cho Kongshu to take charge of receiving the guests. A guest wanted wine. When Kongshu told the teacher said, "Do not lead people to do wrong." According to ceremony, neither wine nor meat should be served at a funeral. In most cases, employing a wet nurse is unavoidable. If the mother is unable to feed her child, someone must be employed. However, it is wrong to kill another mother's child as a result of feeding one's own child. If a wet nurse is absolutely necessary, employ two so that the milk for two babies can be used to feed three. In that case, any eventuality can be taken care of. If one of the wet nurses becomes sick or even dies, there will be no harm to one's own child, and one will not be killing another person's child as a result of feeding one's own. The only thing is that it is expensive to employ two. But if only one is employed and she dies, and something should happen to her child, what greater harm can there be? Unavoidable cases are those like the mothers being too old or sick. People today unnecessarily employ wet nurses. They are definitely wrong. My late father was a chief officer of the first rank. His private name was Shang, and his courtesy name was Po. Over the years, he obtained 5 hereditary positions due an official's son and gave them to descendants of his brothers. When he gave orphan girls in the community in marriage, he always did his best. He gave away his official remuneration to support poor relatives. His brother's wife, whose maiden name was Liu, became a widow, and he supported and took care of her wholeheartedly. When her son-in-law died, he welcomed my cousin, supported and provided her son with an education, and treated him like his own son and nephew. Later, when my cousin's own daughter also became a widow, fearing that my cousin was deeply grieved, he took the widowed daughter home and gave her in marriage. At that time, his official position was minor and his remuneration slight. He denied himself in order to be charitable to others. People felt that he did what was difficult for others to do. Someone asked, taking the widowed grandniece home and giving her in marriage seems to contradict the teaching that a widow should not remarry. How about it? Zhu Xi answered, generally speaking, that should be the case, but people cannot follow that absolutely. Father was kind-hearted and altruistic, but at the same time firm and decisive. In his daily associations with the young and the lowly, he was always careful lest he hurt them. But if they violated any moral principle, he would not give in. Not a day passed when he did not inquire whether those who served him were adequately fed and clothed. He married Miss Ho. My mother was known for filial piety and respectfulness in serving her parents-in-law. She and her father treated each other with respect as guests are treated. Grateful for her help at home, father treated her with even greater reverence, but mother conducted herself with humility and obedience. Even in small matters, she never made decisions alone, but always asked father before she did anything. She was humane, altruistic, liberal, and earnest. She cared for and loved the children of my father's concubines just as she did her own. Our father's cousin's son became an orphan when very young, and she regarded him as her own. She was skillful in ruling the family. She was not stern but correct. She did not like to beat servants, but instead looked upon little servants as her own children. If we children should scorn them, she would always admonish us, saying, although people differ in noble and humble stations, they are people just the same. When you grow up, you can do the same thing. Whenever father got angry, she always gently explained the matter to him. But if we children were wrong, she would not cover up. She often said, children become unworthy because a mother covers up their wrongdoings so the father is unaware of them. Mother had 6 sons, only 2 are still living. Her love and affection for us were of the highest degree, but in teaching us, she would not give in a bit. When we were only several years old, sometimes we stumbled when we walked. People in the family would rush forward to hold us for fear we might cry. Mother would always scold us with a loud voice and say, if you had walked gently, would you have stumbled? Food was always served us by her side. If we swallowed the sauces, as we often did, she'd immediately shout and stop us, saying, if you seek to satisfy your desires when you are young, what will you do when you are grown up? Even when we gave orders to others, we were not allowed to scold in harsh language. Consequently, my brother and I are not particular in our food and clothing, and do not scold people in harsh language. It is not that we are this way by nature, but that we were taught to be like this. When we quarreled with others, even though we were right, she would not take sides with us. She said, the trouble is that one cannot bend and not that one cannot stretch out. When we were somewhat older, we were always told to keep company with good teachers and friends. Although we were poor, whenever someone wanted to invite a guest, she would gladly make preparations for it. When mother was 7 or 8, she read an ancient poem which says, Women do not go out of doors at night. If they do, they carry a lighted candle. From then on, she never went outside the gate of her living quarters after dark. As she grew up, she loved literature but did not engage in flowery compositions. She considered it vastly wrong for present-day women to pass around literary compositions, notes, and letters. In all collections of Cheng's literary works, this biography comes first, but here it is placed at the end of the quotations from him. The reason is that it deals with the regulation of the family in a summary way. All the principles of serving superiors, caring for inferiors, harmony with relatives, and charity toward the lonely are present. Chang Sai Shifu once said, "Can serving parents and sacrificing to ancestors be left to someone else?" To serve parents is to fulfill the duties of a son, and to offer sacrifices is to express one's sincerity. Can these two things be performed by someone else? In serving parents, one must do it personally so that he can do his best to make his parents happy in their daily life. And in sacrificing to ancestors, one must do it personally before he can feel the ancestors were present so that their faces could be seen and their breath could be heard. Shun served his parents well, but they were on occasion still not delighted because his father was obstinate and his mother was insincere. They were absolutely unreasonable. But when parents have the nature of an average person and their love and hate do not violate principle, the son should obey them. He should do his best to entertain his parents' dear friends so as to please his parents. He should do his best to prepare for the service of his parents' guests without figuring whether he can afford it. However, in supporting parents, one must not let them know that one is straining one's effort and resources. If they should become aware of the difficulty, they would not feel happy. The Ode Mountain Torrent says, "Brothers should be good to each other, but should not imitate each other." This is to say that brothers should help each other to do good and not just imitate each other. To imitate is to do the same thing. The trouble with our common feeling is that when our favors are not returned, we stop them. Consequently, kindness cannot last long. Do not follow the lead of others. Just do your own favor. Someone asked, "Brothers should be good to each other, but should not imitate each other. To what does the poem refer?" Zhu Xi answered, "It means they should not imitate each other's wrongdoing. Suppose the older brother is respectful toward his younger brother, but the younger brother is not reverent toward the older brother. Should the older brother imitate his brother's lack of reverence and stop being respectful? The older brother should be respectful to the highest degree." One who has not studied the Chonan and the Shaonan is like one who stands with his face right against the wall. I have thought hard about these words and feel they are truly correct. If in our conduct we do not start with what is dealt with in these poems, we will be up against a block and cannot go on. For the matters dealt with are the nearest and the most intimate things. We must therefore start with them. The odes all deal with matters of personal cultivation and the regulation of the family. To stand with one's face against the wall means that one cannot see anything in the place nearest to one and cannot go a step further. Personal cultivation and the regulation of the family are the nearest things. If even before one goes outdoors one cannot understand these things, it is like standing before a wall. One sees nothing and cannot move forward at all. When servants first come, their original idea is to be respectful with serious effort. If directed and taught with greater and greater care, they will become increasingly careful. If they become indolent, they will cast away their original mind and thus form a habit which will become their second nature. For the same reason, when officials serve in an orderly government, their virtue will advance every day. But if they serve in a chaotic government, their virtue will decline every day. It depends on whether they can learn anything from their superiors. To use greater and greater care in directing and teaching servants means to approach them with gravity and control them in the proper manner so they will not become indolent. It does not mean merely to emphasize sternness,